So it's no secret that watching a largemouth or smallmouth bass eat a topwater frog is probably one of the most addictive ways to catch bass out there today. There is no secret about that. Everybody gets shaking and everybody does what? Everybody sets the hook too early. And what is the problem with a frog? Everybody loves throwing it. Everybody is always so glad to reach for it. But it always has that bad reputation of losing fish or missing fish on a frog. And that's what I want to debunk today. I want to tell you how to stop missing fish on a frog, because there's some things that I think you're doing wrong that you could fix easily in order to stop missing those bass on a frog. So let's dive right into it right now. So we've all been there. We've all been throwing a topwater frog. We've seen those fish come up, explode on it, set the hook, and the frog comes flying back at us. What happened? We thought we had it. We thought that fish nailed it. And now we're just sitting there with a hook in our shoulder trying to figure out what in the heck we did wrong, right? Well, there's a couple things that happen when a fish eats a frog that I think you need to understand first. First off, the bigger the fish, the easier it is to miss them on a frog. And you might say, well, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is a lot of times the biggest fish that are going to eat a frog don't even come up on it. What they do is they use the suction of their mouth to pull that frog under. And so it takes a lot of physical restraint not to pull it away from them. Versus a littler fish needs to use more blunt force to come up and get that frog. And those are the ones that we so often catch, because they come out of the water and they have it before we even have a chance to get them on it, or to miss them on it. And that's one thing that people misunderstand so often, is when fish really want that frog, there's nothing you can do wrong. By the time you understand that that fish is eating it, it transmits to your brain and transmits to your muscles to set the hook. That fish has got it and is going the other way with it, and you're going to land every single one of those. Where people struggle is when those fish are very lackadaisical when they come up to eat it, when they don't want to come out of the water on it, and they're relying more on suction. That is where people mess up. So that is we have to figure out how to counteract and how to stop missing those fish, because it's still super fun and they still come up and eat it, but they're not doing it as fast as they physically could. So real quick, those of you guys that are new to the channel, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button to follow along with the content, but let's debunk this frog mystery right now. So there's two major things that I like to do to stop myself from missing fish on a frog. And the first one that I like to do is most guys throw a frog on a 7-foot to a 7.2 heavy action rod. It's just a standard go-to. That's what everybody talks about throwing. That's what Dean Rojas preaches. That's what most guys preach. But the problem with a smaller rod is you can move the rod faster. Because it's lighter weight, by the time that fish eats it, that allows you to set the hook so much faster because there's less weight to move. So how do you counteract that? You go to a longer rod. Pretty simple, right? So instead of throwing a 7-foot, I like to throw a 7.6, maybe even a 7.11. Because what that's going to do is that is going to make it slower for me to set the hook, which is kind of going to dummy proof it for me, right? So I am automatically counteracting my reaction time by putting more weight in my hand with that longer rod. It also is going to move more line so that when I do get it up, it's going to take me longer to pick up that slack, but when I get it tight, I'm going to be able to move it faster, so then it will counteract that. So instead of using a shorter rod and moving it faster, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a heavier, longer rod and move it slower, which is still going to give me as much power as I need, and it's still going to allow me to get that fish out of there, and I'm still going to move a lot of line when I set the hook, but it's going to slow down that initial bite reaction, and that's going to help you put more fish in the boat automatically right there. Now, this is the other critical thing that I like to talk about: watching your frog. We've all been there. You're talking to your buddy, you're working your frog, and all of a sudden you hear boosh, where that fish has come up, and what we think automatically is that fish has got it, and we rail on it, and our frog comes back and hits us, and we're like, man, what happened? I thought that fish had it. Never take your eyes off your frog when you're working it. Always use a frog that you can see in the given situation that you're in, because if you can't see it, you don't know if that fish has got it. And a lot of times you'll miss fish because they won't eat it on the second attempt, but you'll miss them because they simply just missed your frog. It might not be that they didn't want it, but what happens is they're trying to track that frog through grass, through lily pads, through cattails, whatever you're fishing, and a lot of times they just miss it as it's moving. They're coming up and they have to try to triangulate where that frog is going to be, and they just flat out miss it. And so if they miss it, if you keep it there, a lot of times they're just as pissed that they missed it as you are pissed that they missed it. So they'll sit right there, and all of a sudden when you twitch it again, they'll come up and they'll smoke it. So that's what you need to be doing, is paying attention to where your frog is. Those 2 tips are going to save you more frogfish than probably anything else that I could possibly tell you, or anything else I could possibly do for you. So keep that longer rod in mind, and never take your eye off your frog. Don't forget to check out this video where I break down my favorite frogs for covering water, so that can help you find where these fish are at and catch more fish on a frog to stop wasting time on the water. But God bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.